My name is Fiona Myers. I'm 34 years old. And 11 days ago, I sold my architecture firm for $14 million. All cash. 8 years of work compressed into a wire confirmation and a stack of signed documents inside a law office that smelled like leather chairs and fresh paper. The acquisition closed on a Tuesday afternoon. My attorney handed me a pen that cost $4. My husband brought champagne that cost $32. And honestly, the number itself didn't hit me immediately. What hit me was exhaustion. Because I built that company in the leftover spaces of my life. Between insurance claims for my parents. Between property tax filings. Between fixing wedding permits for my sister. Between solving everyone else's emergencies while nobody noticed I was building something extraordinary quietly. $14 million. And the first thing I wanted to do was call my mother. Interesting instinct. Because children raised inside transactional families still chase emotional approval long after adulthood should have cured them of it. I reached for my phone. Then stopped. Not because she wouldn't care. Because I already knew exactly how the conversation would go. Congratulations, sweetheart. Pause. Now can you still look at your father's insurance claim? She would fold my biggest achievement into her task list without even realizing she'd done it. And honestly, that realization hurt more than anything else. My husband Garrett watched me from across the kitchen table that night. Financial analyst. Quiet. The kind of man who notices structural weaknesses long before collapse becomes visible. He swirled champagne slowly inside his glass. Then asked one question that changed my entire life. When's the last time anyone in your family called without needing something? Interesting thing about simple questions. Sometimes they function like demolition charges. I opened my mouth. Closed it. Because honestly, I couldn't answer. Later that night, I checked my call history. 8 months of calls from my mother. 43 total. Every single one attached to a task. Can you handle the property taxes? Can you call the roofer? Can you fix the caterer issue? Can you look at Dad's insurance claim? Not one. How are you? Not one. I was thinking about you. Not one conversation existing independently from labor. Interesting. Because suddenly, my entire relationship with my family started reading less like affection and more like workflow management. I checked my sister Kelsey's pattern too. Asked casually during a call. Does Mom ever call just to talk? Kelsey laughed immediately. Mom doesn't call to talk. Pause. She calls to delegate. Delegate. Interesting word. Because suddenly, my mother stopped looking like a parent emotionally and started looking like a project manager. Garrett leaned against the kitchen doorway quietly while I scrolled through texts. She doesn't have favorite daughters, he said finally. She has departments. That sentence landed somewhere deep inside me. Because honestly, he was right. Kelsey handled public relations, holiday cards, wedding appearances, church events, Instagram posts, community visibility. I handled operations, permits, taxes, contractors, insurance paperwork, vendor emergencies. We weren't daughters. We were infrastructure. And infrastructure only gets noticed when something breaks. My architecture firm was called Myers Design Group. Sustainable commercial architecture. Converted warehouses. LEED certified office buildings. County libraries. I started it 8 years earlier above a dry cleaner with $11,000 in savings and a second-hand drafting table. Interesting thing about building companies. People call you driven after success. When really you were just terrified of becoming financially dependent on people who measured love like a utility bill. 14 months earlier, Harmon and Kale approached us for acquisition talks. National conglomerate. Massive portfolio. They wanted our methodology. Our client list. Our people. 8 months of negotiations followed. Due diligence. Staff retention packages. Contract reviews so detailed my teeth hurt afterward. And through all of it, I still filed my parents' property taxes. Still covered my father's golf club renewal 3 years straight. $12,600 total. He thanked the club manager twice. Thanked me once. Interesting ratio. When Kelsey's wedding venue faced zoning issues, I fixed that too. Outdoor tent permit problem. Conditional use violation. I called a contractor friend. Got approval resolved in 9 days. Kelsey told everyone. The venue worked it out. My name never came up. And honestly, I didn't even resent it then. Because in transactional families, being needed feels close enough to being loved that you stop distinguishing between them eventually. Garrett poured another glass of champagne that night. Then quietly said, before you tell them about the sale. Pause. Just don't volunteer it for 1 week. I frowned immediately. I'm not testing my family. I didn't say test them. Calm voice. I said observe them. Interesting difference. Because observation doesn't manipulate outcomes. It reveals patterns already there. I compromised. Texted my mother instead. Hey Mom. The acquisition fell through. Rough week. That was it. Simple. An opening. A chance for concern. Care. Curiosity. Anything. Her response arrived 14 minutes later. Oh no. Can you still handle Kelsey's caterer? She's stressed. I stared at the message for almost 30 seconds. Interesting thing about emotional clarity. Sometimes it arrives completely without drama. No tears. No shouting. Just understanding. As far as my mother knew, my career had collapsed. 8 years gone. And her first concern was whether workflow would continue uninterrupted. Not. Are you okay? Not. What happened? Not. Do you need anything? Just operational continuity. The system rerouting around potential service interruption. Day 1. My mother never called afterward. Instead, she posted Instagram stories from Kelsey's bridal fitting. Champagne glasses. Dress photos. Boomerangs. Caption. Mother of the bright energy sparkles. Interesting. Because apparently one daughter's professional collapse didn't qualify as social content. Back office departments rarely make the newsletter. That evening, my father called briefly. Distracted voice. You okay, kiddo? Before I could answer, my mother called him to dinner in the background. Listen, I gotta go. We'll catch up. Click. He never called back. Day 2. Kelsey texted me 47 words about floral arrangements. Centerpiece options. Peonies versus roses. Final vendor confirmation. At the bottom. Also Mom told me about your work thing. That sucks. Then immediately back to flowers. Interesting structure. Because empathy became a footnote beneath event logistics. I still handled the florist. Picked low-profile centerpieces because the venue ceilings would make tall arrangements visually crowded. Architectural instinct. I solved spatial problems automatically. Even while emotionally unraveling. And honestly, for the first time in my life, I hated myself slightly for continuing to help. Day 4. My college friend Jess texted me a screenshot. Wait, is this your parents' house? I opened it. Airbnb listing. My childhood bedroom. $89 a night. 3 photos. White bedding. Decorative lavender. And the window seat I built myself when I was 16 years old using my father's tools. Interesting thing about grief. Sometimes it arrives disguised as real estate photography. I zoomed into the photos slowly. My name plaque was gone from the door. The window seat now held a decorative pillow embroidered with Day 5 started with silence. No calls from my mother. No follow-up from my father. No questions about the company that had supposedly collapsed. Interesting thing about emotional neglect. Once you start measuring it carefully, the pattern becomes impossible to unsee. I sat at the kitchen island drinking cold coffee while my daughter Mabel colored cardboard houses beside me. Theo pushed toy trucks across the hardwood floor, making engine noises loud enough to vibrate through the cabinets. Normal morning. Beautiful morning. And somehow, that made my family feel even stranger by comparison. Because my children loved me without invoices attached. No performance reviews. No deliverables. No balance sheet. Just presence. My phone buzzed at 9:47 a.m. Kelsey. Long text. Too long. Interesting. Because people preparing to hurt you often over-explain first. Fee. Mom called this morning. Pause. She thinks with everything going on financially right now. Another pause. It might be awkward if you came to the wedding empty-handed. I stopped reading. Honestly? For several seconds? My brain rejected the sentence completely. Like language itself malfunctioned. Empty-handed. Interesting phrase. Because apparently 4 months of unpaid labor didn't count as contribution unless wrapped in a gift box publicly. I kept reading slowly. Maybe it's better if you sit this one out. Sit this one out. Like I was being benched from a recreational softball game instead of removed from my own sister's wedding. I looked around the kitchen automatically. Mabel humming while coloring. Theo asleep beneath the breakfast table with one sock half off. Morning sunlight hitting the south-facing windows I personally designed into this house. And honestly, something inside me went completely still. Not rage. Recognition. Because suddenly, the architecture of my family became visible. Clear. Mathematical. My mother had run the calculation. Bankrupt Fiona equals insufficient wedding gift. Insufficient wedding gift equals social embarrassment. Social embarrassment reflects poorly on the family. Solution. Remove the liability. Efficient. Cold. Perfectly consistent with everything else. Garrett found me sitting on the bathroom floor 20 minutes later. Phone still in my hand. I wasn't crying. Interesting. Because some realizations arrive too deep for immediate emotion. She uninvited me. Garrett leaned quietly against the doorway. Why? Because Mom said if I showed up without a proper gift. Pause. It would be awkward. He closed his eyes briefly. Not surprised. Just disappointed in a way that looked physically exhausting. You handled her florist. I know. Her caterer. I know. Her permit issue. I know. Interesting thing about healthy people. They often sound angrier about your mistreatment than you do. Because your nervous system adapted to the behavior years earlier. On our refrigerator, the wedding invitation still hung beneath a sunflower magnet. Cream envelope. Gold lettering. My name in calligraphy. 5 months displayed like proof I belonged somewhere. And honestly, I couldn't bring myself to remove it yet. Not because I still wanted to attend. Because taking it down felt like officially acknowledging something I spent 34 years trying not to understand. That evening, Garrett sat across from me at the kitchen table with printer paper and a pencil. He started drawing boxes. At the top, Diane Myers, CEO. Below that, 2 branches. Operations, Fiona. Vendor management. Permits. Taxes. Insurance. Maintenance. Public relations, Kelsey. Social events. RSVPs. Holiday cards. Instagram. Community visibility. At the bottom, admin routing, Roger. My father. Your family isn't a family, Garrett said quietly. Pause. It's an organization chart. Interesting thing about diagrams. They remove emotion from systems long enough to expose how they actually function. I stared at the page silently. And honestly, every relationship suddenly fit inside those boxes perfectly. Every Thanksgiving. Every birthday. Every phone call. Every task. My mother wasn't cruel emotionally. She was managerial. And managers don't maintain departments that stop producing output. Day 8. My senior architect Nora sent me screenshots from a group chat I didn't know existed. Title: Myers Family Updates. Created 2 years earlier. Interesting. Because apparently my entire family maintained an operational communications channel without including me. Nora's husband Greg was distantly related through marriage. Which is how the screenshots reached me accidentally. I opened them carefully. Message 1. My mother. Fiona's company went under. She probably can't contribute to the wedding anymore. Contribute. There it was again. Not. She's struggling. Not. She must be devastated. Just contribution capacity assessment. Like reviewing budget projections. Kelsey responded next. So do I need another florist coordinator? I actually laughed softly reading that. Not because it was funny. Because suddenly, everything became absurdly honest. As far as my sister understood it. Her biggest concern regarding my professional collapse was workflow continuity. Not me. The flowers. My father finally entered the conversation. Let's just give her space. She'll figure it out. Interesting sentence. Because people avoiding emotional responsibility always rename abandonment as respect. Then my mother wrote the message that permanently changed how I saw her. I'm listing the spare room. Pause. No point keeping it empty if she's not contributing anymore. I read those words 6 times. Maybe more. Not contributing anymore. Interesting thing about devastating sentences. Sometimes they aren't emotionally dramatic at all. Sometimes they sound administrative. Practical. Like spreadsheet logic applied to human beings. Garrett read the screenshots beside me quietly. Then exhaled once through his nose. She already reassigned your room before checking if you were okay. And honestly? That sentence hurt worse than the Airbnb listing itself. Because suddenly, my mother's behavior stopped feeling personal. Which somehow made it colder. I wasn't hated. I was archived. An inactive department. And used square footage. Idle operational capacity. That night, I sat alone at my drafting desk upstairs. The lamp above it illuminated blueprints for a community arts center I'd abandoned midway through acquisition negotiations months earlier. Pencils. Scale rulers. Architectural sketches. The familiar language of structure and load-bearing calculations. Interesting. Because architecture teaches you something families rarely do. If a structure depends entirely on one person holding weight silently, eventually collapse becomes mathematically inevitable. My phone buzzed again. Another screenshot from Nora. My mother again inside the group chat. We need to focus on Kelsey now. Focus on Kelsey. Interesting phrasing. Because apparently emotional attention inside my family operated like finite staffing resources during a crisis. My father responded with a thumbs up emoji. Just that. No questions about me. No concern. Emoji acknowledgement. Administrative confirmation. I stared at the phone screen for a long time afterward. Then quietly opened a folder on my laptop. Named it Architecture. Inside, I saved every screenshot. The Airbnb listing. The wedding text. The group chat messages. Interesting choice maybe. But architects document everything before demolition. Not for revenge. For structural clarity. Day 9. I called my attorney Claudia. Same woman who handled the acquisition. Same leather chair office. Same smell of fresh paper and expensive coffee. I need 3 wire transfers prepared. Pause. $50,000 each. Silence. Then carefully. To whom? My mother. My father. My sister. Another silence. Interesting thing about good attorneys. They know when clients are making emotional decisions. But great attorneys recognize when decisions stopped being emotional entirely. Is this a gift? Claudia asked. No. Looking out her office window toward downtown traffic. It's a closing payment. For what? 9 years of uncompensated services. And honestly? That was the first time I'd ever said the truth out loud completely. Not help. Not support. Services. My mother tracked contribution. Fine. I would finalize the ledger professionally. Garrett listened quietly when I explained the plan later that night. 3 transfers. The wedding was scheduled for Saturday at 4:30 p.m. Winter Garden Conservatory. Downtown Nashville. Glass ceilings. Imported orchids. White marble floors polished bright enough to reflect chandelier light like water. And honestly? It looked less like a wedding venue and more like a place corporations hosted mergers disguised as romance. Interesting. Because that was exactly what my family understood best. Transactions. Optics. Strategic alliances. Not intimacy. Not loyalty. Certainly not unconditional love. Saturday morning. I woke before sunrise. Not because I planned on attending. Because grief wakes people early. The house felt quiet. Garrett still asleep upstairs beside Theo's dinosaur nightlight glowing faintly through the hallway. Mabel curled sideways across her bed clutching a stuffed fox missing one button eye. I stood in the kitchen barefoot drinking coffee while Nashville rain tapped softly against the windows. And honestly? For the first time in my adult life, I felt unnecessary. Interesting feeling. Because once someone spends decades solving everybody else's emergencies, silence feels unnatural. My phone buzzed at 8:12 a.m. Mother. Not a call. Text. Can you still send over the seating chart revisions? I stared at the message for several seconds. Today. Her younger daughter's wedding day. And still. Workflow first. Not. I wish you were here. Not. This feels strange without you. Just logistics. Operational continuity. I forwarded the updated seating chart immediately. Of course I did. Interesting thing about conditioning. Even after recognition arrives? Habits survive longer than dignity sometimes. Her response came 23 seconds later. Perfect. Thank you. No heart emoji. No emotion. No acknowledgement I'd been removed from the event entirely. Just task completion confirmation. Like closing a help desk ticket. Garrett found me staring at the phone screen afterward. Still helping? Not judgmental. Just tired. I nodded once. Then quietly admitted something ugly. I don't know how to stop. He walked over slowly. Took the coffee mug from my hands before it spilled. And honestly? The kindness almost hurt. Because healthy love feels suspicious once you've spent enough years earning affection through usefulness. At 11:40 a.m., my attorney Claudia confirmed the wire transfers. $50,000 each. 3 separate accounts. Mother. Father. Kelsey. Reference line. Final contribution settlement. Interesting wording. Because legally, words matter. Emotionally too sometimes. Claudia called afterward. Are you absolutely sure? I looked around the kitchen slowly. Blueprints stacked beside Theo's crayons. Mabel's half-finished cardboard castle on the counter. Garrett upstairs helping our son tie tiny dress shoes for a wedding we were no longer attending. And honestly? I'd never been more sure of anything. Yes. Pause. I'm closing the account. The transfers processed at 12:07 p.m. Exactly 3 hours before the ceremony. My mother called at 12:11. Voice sharp immediately. What is this? Interesting. Because apparently financial notifications triggered faster emotional urgency than my supposed career collapse did. You tracked contribution, I answered calmly. So I calculated mine. Silence. Huge silence. Then. Fiona, what are you talking about? Interesting tactic. Confusion. Force emotional reconsideration. I opened the spreadsheet on my laptop while speaking. Yes. Spreadsheet. Because architects document labor instinctively. Vendor coordination hours. Tax filings. Permit negotiations. Insurance claims. Contractor management. Emergency repairs. Wedding consulting. 9 years. Estimated market value. $614,000. I only charged them $150,000 total. Honestly? Still discounted heavily. You said I stopped contributing, I said quietly. So I settled my balance professionally. My mother inhaled sharply. This is insane. Interesting word. Because people benefiting from exploitation always describe boundaries as irrational once compensation enters the conversation. You uninvited me from Kelsey's wedding because you thought I couldn't afford a gift. Silence again. Then instantly. Deflection. That's not what happened. Interesting. Because technically she was right. She didn't uninvite me personally. She delegated Kelsey to do it operationally. Management structure. I kept my voice steady. You listed my childhood bedroom on Airbnb before checking whether I was okay. Another silence. Longer this time. And honestly? I think that sentence finally embarrassed her slightly. Not because of the room itself. Because I'd noticed the timing. My father joined the call suddenly. Speakerphone probably. Kiddo, nobody meant anything by this. Interesting phrase. Because emotional negligence often hides behind lack of intent arguments. No one meant anything. It just happened repeatedly for 34 years accidentally. Like weather. Like gravity. I heard wedding activity behind them. Hairdryers. Voices. Champagne glasses clinking. Kelsey laughing somewhere in the background. And honestly? For the first time, I felt completely outside the system emotionally. Like I was listening to another company's conference call. Then my mother said the sentence that ended everything permanently. We all have roles in families, Fiona. Roles. There it was. Raw. Unfiltered. Not daughter. Role. Function. Department. Operational category. Interesting thing about truth. Sometimes people reveal it accidentally while trying to defend themselves. I closed my eyes briefly. Then quietly asked. And what happens when someone stops performing their role? Silence. My father answered this time. We adapt. Adapt. Interesting corporate language for emotional replacement. I looked at Garrett standing silently in the doorway listening now. Then toward my children upstairs. And honestly, I suddenly understood something terrifying. If I stayed inside this system, my children would eventually learn love worked the same way. Performance equals belonging. Usefulness equals affection. Failure equals replacement. Absolutely not. I hope Kelsey has a beautiful wedding, I said calmly. Pause. But after today, looking at the spreadsheet one last time, I resigned from my position. Then I hung up. No shouting. No crying. Just closure. Interesting thing about emotional detachment. Once it finally arrives, it sounds unbelievably quiet. The wedding ceremony started at 4:30. At 4:31, my mother called again. Declined. At 4:42, Kelsey texted. Mom is freaking out. Why would you send that money? Interesting. Not. Are you okay? Not. I'm sorry. Still process focused. I didn't answer. At 5:10, my father texted. You embarrassed your mother today. There it was. Not concern about losing me. Concern about optics. Always optics. Interesting thing about transactional families. They confuse disruption with cruelty because systems matter more than people eventually. Garrett took my phone gently afterward. Set it face down on the counter. Then handed me my coat. Come outside. It was raining lightly. Cold December rain. We walked downtown with the kids under umbrellas while wedding guests somewhere across the city photographed centerpieces I designed. Theo splashed through puddles wearing dinosaur rain boots. Mabel held my hand swinging her umbrella sideways dangerously close to strangers. Normal chaos. Beautiful chaos. And honestly, I suddenly realized something devastating. My children didn't care whether I contributed anything. They just wanted me there. That realization hit harder than every group chat screenshot combined. Around 7 p.m., Nora texted again. Another screenshot from the family chat. Chaos now. My mother. I cannot believe Fiona would do this today. Kelsey. She made herself the victim again. My father. She's always been emotional. Interesting. Because women become emotional instantly the second they stop providing unpaid labor quietly. Then came the message that changed everything. Not from my mother. Not Kelsey. My grandmother Evelyn. 82 years old. Mostly silent in family chats. Former librarian. The kind of woman who weaponized precision quietly. Her message appeared beneath everyone else's. Fiona raised all of you more than Diane ever did. Silence afterward. Digital silence. No responses for 4 full minutes. Then Grandma Evelyn sent one more message. You treated her like staff. Honestly? I cried then. Not because it hurt. Because somebody finally said it out loud. Publicly. Without me explaining first. Garrett read the messages beside me while we sat in the parked car outside an ice cream shop with the kids asleep in the back seat. Then softly asked, "How does it feel?" Interesting question. Because honestly, I expected devastation. Collapse. Grief. Instead, I felt light. Like I'd spent 34 years carrying invisible architecture nobody else acknowledged. And finally set it down. At 10:14 p.m., one final notification appeared. My mother. Short message. No greeting. No apology. Just, "Can you still help us with the tax appeal next month?" I stared at it for almost 20 seconds. Then laughed. Actually laughed. Because suddenly, the system looked absurdly obvious from outside it. Garrett raised an eyebrow beside me. I turned the phone toward him. He read the message. Then quietly said, "She still thinks your resignation was temporary." Interesting. Because dysfunctional systems rarely believe infrastructure can actually leave. They assume repair crews always return eventually. This time, they were wrong. Monday morning, my mother arrived at my house unannounced. 9:13 a.m. Silver Lexus. Perfect blowout. Cashmere coat buttoned neatly despite the rain. Interesting thing about women who build identities around control. They still dress for authority even when panic finally arrives underneath it. I watched her through the kitchen window while Theo stacked blocks beside the breakfast table. Mabel sat coloring suns with purple crayons because children understand joy more creatively than adults do. And honestly, for the first time in my life, I didn't rush to open the door. No immediate guilt. No instinctive urgency. Just observation. Garrett looked up from the espresso machine quietly. "You don't have to let her in." Interesting sentence. Because healthy people remind you choice exists. I opened the door anyway. Not because I felt obligated. Because I finally wanted clarity without emotional fog attached to it. My mother entered already mid-sentence. "Fiona, this has gotten completely out of hand."